Let's get a little weird. Let's get a little odd. Those sounds you like to hear. We got it going on. It's the OddCast. It's the OddCast. It's the OddCast. It's the OddCast. How in the heck is everybody doing today, tonight, wherever you are? Shouts out to you. Welcome back to the OddCast, where stuff that's odd gets the nod. Today we're going to be talking about sports, NBA way too early playoff rankings. We're going to be talking about Lakers fair weather fans. We're going to be talking about Liverpool, Chelsea, Carabao Cup. We're going to be talking about why awards in sports are a little bit bullshit, and then we're going to be doing some quick hits. Then we're going to be going on to beers and food. We're going to be talking about sour beer. New phenomenon within brewing. It's fucking awesome. Going to give you guys a breakdown on some cool yeasts, some different types of sours that are very drinkable, even if you don't like beer. I would highly recommend them. We're going to be talking about why in the heck doesn't every brewery serve food within their confines. And then we're going to be moving on to TVs, music, and movies. I'm going to give you some TV recommendations. Got a couple new good shows for you that I think you guys will dig. We're going to be talking about why remakes are so prevalent within Hollywood, or are they? And then we're going to finish it off with a cool music recommendation. Then we're going to venture into some financial topics, ETFs, exchange-traded funds, and then finish off that sector with a documentary about multi-level marketing schemes versus pyramid schemes called Betting on Zero, in which Bill Ackman takes on the company Herbalife, says it's worth nothing. Finally, we're going to finish it off on some science and technology. There's a guy in Wisconsin or Minnesota, I believe, who was paralyzed for 5 years and has just regained the use of his legs via a mind-controlled device implemented by the doctors at the Mayo Clinic. And then NASA has just released a plan for lunar and Mars landings and our space program moving forward into 2020 and 2030. So let's check it on out. The beer of the day is from the brewery. It's Take My Hands, the brewery Thoreau, up in Orange County. It's a 5% AVB American Wild Ale. 92% of it is tart wheat beer brewed with salt and aged in an oak foeder. And then 8%, the remaining 8% is a sour blonde ale aged in oak barrels with Cara oranges. So, and that really comes through strong, those oranges. You get, really hints of like kind of grapefruit, lime, lemon, melon, even kind of peach, and the Brettanomyces, the Brett, really comes across strong with the acidity. So, cheers to everyone. As always. All right. So let's start it off with
Let's talk about sports.
The NBA, way too early playoff seedings. We're going to go West first. I got Golden State finishing first. 58 wins last season. They got the same roster plus Boogie Cousins. Need I say more? No, I don't. They're good. We get it. Houston Rockets are coming in the 2 spot. 65 win season. James Harden coming off an MVP year. Will Melo make them worse or better? That's my question. Who knows? My 3rd spot is the Lakers. That's a bit of a homer pick. It's all good. We talked about Lonzo's improved jump shot. We've talked about him getting bigger, being able to drive to the hoop a little more. Ingram is playing better defense, apparently. We'll see. We'll see. It's going to be a very interesting thing moving forward. Oh, yeah, plus LeBron James. Thank you very kindly. The Utah Jazz are my 4th seeded team in the West. Donovan Mitchell coming off an amazing year. They got a solid young core. They finished off last season 29-6. Within that 35 game span, they had the 2nd best point differential within the NBA. So, and Rudy Gobert is really an unsung hero of that team as well. The Minnesota Timberwolves are my 5 spot. This is basically hinging on the fact that Jimmy Butler can come together with the team because they have Karl Anthony Towns, they got Wiggins, and they got Butler. Tom Thibodeau backed him in the trade issues this summer. The ownership wanted to trade him. Thibodeau backed him. Can Butler come together with the team is the big issue for me. The Denver Nuggets are in my sixth spot. They have a drought of 5 years missing the playoffs. Now, the thing is, they have the dominant Nikola Jokic. They have the high-flying Gary Harris. They have the sharpshooting Jamal Murray. Now, they also have 3 out of 7 of the players in the NBA who are under 23 years old, who have played 65 games, and that are averaging 16.5 points per game. They have 3 out of 7 of those. That's pretty insane. Young squad. Think they're going to get up there. I have, in the 7th spot, I have the Oklahoma City Thunder. They added Dennis Schroeder. Does Carmelo leaving help them? I believe it does. I don't mean to hit on Carmelo again, but, it is what it is. And finally, rounding it out, I have the San Antonio Spurs. I don't think they're going to break that 21-year streak. 22 it would be this year if they make the playoffs again, of making the playoffs. They made the playoffs last year. People were, oh, they had Kawhi Leonard. No, they didn't. They had him for 9 games, and they have DeMar DeRozan now, who's playing with the chip on his shoulder. They're going to, at the very least, make the playoffs. I think an 8 seed is actually kind of me disrespecting them, but we'll see. So, in the West, I have Golden State Warriors. I have the Houston Rockets. I have the Los Angeles Lakers. I have the Utah Jazz. I have the Minnesota Timberwolves. I have the Denver Nuggets. I have the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I have the San Antonio Spurs in that order. In the East, I have the Boston Celtics first, coming off a 55-win season. Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving missed a collective of 103 games last year. I mean, come on. Plus, they have the core of Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Scary Terry Rozier. Hello, operator. I got the Philadelphia 76ers coming in the 2 spot, just after the Celtics. Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons. Can Markelle Fultz be good? That's my big issue for that team. Can Markelle Fultz be good? And they got a new GM in Elton Brand, a former 20-10 guy. I like Elton Brand, so it'd be cool to see him make some cool moves. I got the Toronto Raptors in the 3 spot coming off a 59-win season. Now, Kawhi Leonard, obviously. New head coach in Nick Nurse. He's been an assistant coach there since 2013. He had a long stint in the EuroLeague, I believe 10 years, with pretty good success. And he won 2 G League championships. So he's shown the ability to work with a multitude of different type of players. I think he's going to be a good head coach. I think he's going to be able to relate to the players and inspire them. So I have them in the 3 spot. Indiana Pacers are in my 4 spot, the surprise from last year. Miles Turner continues to develop. Oladipo is obviously a stud. And they got Doug McDermott and Tyreek Evans, so the former Rookie of the Year with the Sacramento Kings. So we'll see what happens with them. On the East, in the 5 spot, I have the Milwaukee Bucks. 7th seed last year, but they nearly beat Boston in the first round. Giannis, need I say more? And they got Mike Budenholzer as their head coach, who has experience in San Antonio Spurs and also with the Atlanta Hawks. So going forward, I think he can take that young team in a good direction. Detroit Pistons, Dwayne Casey, the reigning NBA Coach of the Year, shouldn't have been removed from. As much as I was saying I like Nick Nurse, really, for me, Dwayne Casey's a good coach. Plus, they got Blake Griffin. So they're my 6th spot. Washington Wizards, John Wall, you're looking a little bit fat. But still one of the best backcourts in the NBA with him and Bradley Beal. Got to wonder about that. They signed Dwight Howard. Big moves. Miami Heat, it's Dwayne Wade's sign-off season. I got to pick them in the 8th spot. They probably will go higher. They got to work out their issues with Hassan Whiteside in his playing time because that kid is a stud. All right. So I just want to end that off with discussing this real quick. I believe truly in my heart of hearts that an NBA in which you have a freaking 1 through 16 versus an 8-8 from East-West is a better situation, 1 through 16, regardless of East West, because then you're going to get the best teams, the best media, the best broadcasts. There could be negatives of that, and you know what? We're going to discuss that next time. So we'll see how that works out. So, guys, we have to get ready for the Lakers fair weather fans to come back. I know so many people who are Golden State fans now and Clippers fans who were like Lakers fans when, you know, it was Kobe and Gasol, Kobe and Shaq. And we all diehard Lakers. And then you just leave, and they are coming back now preemptively because they know the Lakers are basically, at the very least, playoff bound. You know what? I welcome them with open arms. I got nothing but love. It is what it is, but you know who you fucking are. And the thing is, too, it's like we're already going to have to contend with the people who just like LeBron because LeBron is LeBron. But then we got to put up with the people who are going to be like, I wrote it out with the Lakers in hard times. When you got fucking like social media posts of you like Warriors, Dubs, like Clippers, like it's like just there's no need. Like, it's just a sports team. Just like be loyal to one team. There's no reason just to defer. Anyway, we welcome you back with open arms. We're excited to root with you. The Liverpool-Chelsea Carabao Cup match, I have to talk about it super quick. It was a 2-1 match. Liverpool dominated the entire match, but Chelsea scored 2 goals within 4.5 minutes. This is an issue, right? The issue first for me is that Liverpool are creating so many damn chances, but they're not finishing those chances, right? So you can create a chance, you can have the ball in front of the goal, but if you don't put the ball in the net, it doesn't mean shit. You know, I know that sounds corny or whatever, but hey, it is what it is. Now, Daniel Sturridge is going to be a fixture in the Liverpool squad moving forward. I will tell you that much. Naby Keita is a force in the midfield. Again, 2-1 victory to Chelsea. Liverpool are out of the Carabao Cup. Now they cannot win the quadruple, which means winning 4 competitions within one season. We deserved to win that game. Again, the issue is not scoring off as many chances as you create. And the other issue is getting a lead early off an acrobatic Sturridge goal and then giving away the lead to a good team. Brilliant goal from Eden Hazard on Chelsea to take the lead. So, you know, it is what it is. The thing is, I think Eden Hazard is a bit of a diver. However, the reason why I would say it's okay, I think he gets fucking fouled so much just because of his style of play. And I think I would relate that to Neymar in the World Cup, how people were criticizing Neymar for diving. It's a bit ridiculous because if you look at the statistics, Neymar was also the most fouled player in the World Cup. So, come on. Like, the guy gets fucking punked and then he's supposed to, you know. I'm not saying that it's okay to dive. I'm just saying, like, I'm a bit playing devil's advocate. I'm reasoning why one would. So I want to talk a bit for a second about awards in sports and why they're a little bit bullshit. I'm just going to bring up a couple examples from the NBA. Kobe Bryant only has 1 league MVP. I mean, I don't mean to be a jerk, and I don't mean to criticize Steve Nash. I'm actually a huge Steve Nash fan. However, if you're going to sit there and tell me that Kobe Bryant's a one-time league MVP, legitimately, I would call you a liar. It's all good. I love Steve Nash Steve Nash, Amari Stoudemire, Sean Marion, Raja Bell. That was a great freaking Suns team. But I want to compare it also to another one from the NBA, the 2015 NBA Finals, in which the Cavs lost, I believe it was 4-1 to the Golden State Warriors. Andre Iguodala won the MVP. LeBron James was the MVP in that series. There's only ever been one MVP from a losing team. I believe it was Jerry West way back in the day. But just my issue is, look, it's sports. We got to run statistics on this. It has to be a little bit statistical. I really don't understand how LeBron didn't win. Listen, Andre Iguodala averaged 37 minutes per game. LeBron averaged 45 minutes per game. Andre Iguodala averaged 16.3 points per game. LeBron averaged 35.8 points per game. Iggy averaged 4 assists per game. LeBron averaged 8.8 assists per game. They both averaged the same amount of steals, and LeBron averaged slightly higher on blocks, but not significantly. But 35-16, almost 9-4 in terms of points and assists. I mean, come on. He was the MVP of that series. It's the most fucking valuable player. Anyway, I want to relate that back to Mohamed Salah. Mohamed Salah from Liverpool did not win the Player of the Year, which, in my opinion, he should have. But he didn't even get on the FIFA Pro's Best 11 of the year. Best 11 of the year? Dude, he's the all-time leading scorer in the Premier League, the current 38-game season format. He scored 34 goals and had 10 assists. He led Liverpool to a top 4 finish and a Champions League final. He led Egypt to qualify for the World Cup. He had 12 goals in the UEFA Champions League. Luka Modric on Real Madrid, who won Player of the Year. He scored 26 goals in La Liga, 23 goals and 6 assists. So 23 goals is apparently better than 34 goals. And 6 assists is apparently better than 10 assists. The La Liga must be doing shit that the Premier League hasn't even heard about. Jeebus. I mean, come on. It's the same thing as Kobe only winning out one MVP. That Mohamed Salah is not... This guy scores fucking wonder goals. Anyway. It's all good. It's all love. And the fact of the matter is, I think that Luka Modric's performance in the World Cup was absolutely phenomenal. But I think what Mohamed Salah did on Liverpool last season is something that basically will not and cannot be replicated. He was the best player in soccer last year. Football, soccer, he really was. And this is not me being a Liverpool fan. This is me being a fan of the sport and a kind of understanding surveyor of the game. Anyway. So these are my brief hot takes in sports. CC Sabathia. He lost $500,000 in a bonus for getting ejected from a game because the ump saw it as when he hit a batter, the ump saw it as a retaliation because prior to him hitting someone, 2 other people had been hit in the game. It was a Yankees game on Thursday versus the Tampa Bay Rays. So CC Sabathia came into that game having pitched 148 innings on the season. He needed to get through 7 innings in order to get to 155, which would have activated his $500,000 bonus in his contract. In the 6th inning, he threw a 92.5-mile-an-hour cutter into the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. I think it was the catcher, Jesus Sucre's leg. And he, in retaliation, and got ejected. When he was asked about losing the money, he said, "I don't really make decisions based on money." And we all know that CC Sabathia is he's a freaking warrior. That fool could have gone the distance, no doubt. Either way, he said, just felt like it was the right thing to do. The Padres, rated by ESPN as the second most miserable fan base in sports. Thank you very much, ESPN and Disney, for giving me another reason to not fuck with you. Miserable? 25,000 seats that we fill up, even with the team that gets 65 wins in a year? Excuse me, we live where you vacation? I have nothing but, that's all good. We closed the season out with a series win against the Diamondbacks. 2 of the last 3 games were extra innings walk-off wins. Pretty fucking cool. Freddie Galvis finished off the season great. Eric Hosmer finished off the season great. Will Myers finished off the season great. Renfroe finished off the season great. Guerra finished off the season great. Lucchesi got the start today. Yates finished off the season great. So we're rocking. Giancarlo Stanton hit his 38th home run of the year. And as he was rounding second, he was at Fenway in a Yankees win over the Red Sox. And as he was rounding second, a guy who caught the home run threw it back onto the field as he do with opposing teams. And he actually hit Giancarlo Stanton in the fucking leg as he was rounding second. And Giancarlo Stanton tipped his cap to him because it was a great throw. It didn't hurt him in any way. So, NL West and the NL Central. We got the Cubbies versus the Brewers at Wrigley Field. I got the Brewers winning that game. So I think the Brewers are going to win the division. This is a playoff because 162 games have happened, folks. We're getting in the 163rd game because they tied in their division. They got the exact same record. So they're going to be playing at Wrigley for who wins the division and who has to do the wild card playoff. I think that the Brewers will win that game. In the NL West, we have the Dodgers versus the Rockies in the same situation. No one's won the division after 162 games. They have the same record. They're going to be playing at Dodger Stadium. I have the Dodgers winning that game over the Rockies. So I believe the Dodgers will win. I believe that the Brewers will win. And I believe that the Cubs and the Rockies will be the wild card teams from the NL West and Central. Earl Thomas was carted off today with an apparent leg injury. I believe his leg was broken. The odd thing was he flicked off his own sideline as he was getting carted off. I don't know what that means. He had certain discourse with his team in regards to, I think it was contract issues a couple years ago, or it was this year. It was very odd. The Seahawks, by the way, won that game 20-17 against the Cardinals. The Ravens D proved far too much on Sunday Night Football for the sputtering Steelers offense. The Bengals beat the Falcons in a barn burner. The Falcons D is pretty shit. With a great offense like that, it's awesome. Like you can have, great quarterbacks, great wide receivers, great, halfbacks, but it's just not going to work if you have a shit D. The Raiders beat the Browns in an overtime thriller to overcome Baker Mayfield in his first start as a starting quarterback. And Lewis Hamilton won the Russian Grand Prix. HBO is getting out of the fight game after 45 years, citing streaming and other networks as too competitive to maintain the live fight business with. They're going to discontinue it at the end of this year. They said from an entertainment standpoint that boxing is not unique anymore. And I don't know if it was prior or subsequently, but Top Rank signed a deal with ESPN. Fuck Disney. Thank you very much. Tiger, East Lake Tour Championship. He won it, getting his 80th tour win. Took him 5 years to get from 79 to 80, but he did it. Hitting rounds of 65, 68, 65, and 71. Hello, operator. Lakers lost their preseason game in San Diego tonight. But Mikhailiuk, LeBron looks ready to make us better. Kuz was a beast. And the Nuggets shot the lights out. Man United lost on the weekend to West Ham 3-1. Mourinho is on the hot seat. Man City wins to tie Liverpool at the top of the table. Liverpool tied Chelsea on the weekend 1-1. Fuck off Chelsea. Fuck off Chelsea. Fuck off Chelsea. But Daniel Sturridge scores an absolute wonder goal. Thank you. Thank you.
Ohio State beats Penn State
in Happy Valley by 1 point in an absolute thriller. Clemson avoids the upset to Syracuse, but they lose quarterback Trevor Lawrence to an injury. They miss Kelly Bryant right now, who backed up Deshaun Watson, but when Trevor Lawrence got named the starter, he declared he was transferring. And Notre Dame beat Stanford viciously, 38-17. Done. Let's move on to food and beer.
Let's talk about the food and beer now.
So we're going to talk sours today, folks. Sour is a beer that essentially tastes tart or sour on purpose. Now, back in the day, this is really interesting, actually. It started in Belgium. Back in the day, all beers were sour to a certain degree. That's because beers were brewed in wooden barrels or they were cooled outside. Now, when they were brewed in the barrels or cooled outside, they would get natural yeast or bacteria cultures in the brew, which would naturally make it taste sour. Today, in a lot of brewing, we brew in sterile environments with these very, beautiful stainless steel, barrels to brew the beer in. So what we do now is to create that same sour taste. Sometimes we brew them in barrels, but also sometimes we do the same thing in those beautiful stainless steel environments, but we introduce the bacteria in it kind of man-made instead of naturally, as in back in the day. So Belgians traditionally allowed the wild yeast to enter the beer through barrels without really knowing it, or would expose the batch outside to the air during the cooling process. The most common agents used in sour beer are lactobacillus, Brettanomyces, and Saccharomyces, among many others, of course. It's a very uncertain process, and it can take a lot to invest in it. It can take months to ferment and up to years for the beer to mature. So again, traditional sours came about by almost way of luck, which is really cool. But the beers were stored in wooden barrels or open-air vessels, known as cool ships, while fermenting. And the huge amounts of barrels or staves of beer were exposed to the open air, exposed to a host of microorganisms, which would naturally make the beer sour. And it wasn't even until the mid-19th century that a gentleman by the name of Louis Pasteur really was even able to prove that those cells within the beer existed, let alone how they affected the beer. And now that sour is such a, highly refined, highly sought after beer, it kind of makes it funny that it was almost, back in the day it was sought against. So a little deeper dive into the, kind of some of the microflora and the cultures that affect the beer. I want to take you through about 4. There's many more, of course, but these are 4 that I really think are really interesting. Lactobacillus, first of all, which is lacto, and that's going to create lactic acid, resulting in kind of a clean, lemony, tart, puckery sour. That's really nice. There's the Brettanomyces, which is the wild yeast, and Brettanomyces we'll call Brett. This is going to create a drier, funkier set of flavors. It's really nice too. Then there's the Pediococcus, which is pedio, we'll call it, which creates the tart lactic acid, but also brings those funkier notes. And then finally, there's the Acetobacter, which is the same thing that turns wine into vinegar and creates acetic acid. So it'll give you that light vinegary taste, which can be balanced out with a little sweetness from either syrup or fruit. So let's go through some sour beer styles. These are really interesting. I think I got a cool little plethora of styles for you guys. The first is what I'm drinking right now, the Take My Hand from the brewery. It's an American Wild Ale. It's a blend. The thing is, this is a catch-all term in that it's brewed using yeast and bacteria strains instead of or with standard yeast. And it's a catch-all term again in the sense that American wild ales, they don't really have any guidelines, right? It's just using unique yeasts is kind of the big thing, or using cool blends. Like, you can basically do whatever the fuck you want with American wild ale. The second one is Berliner Weiss. Obviously, it's made in Berlin. Usually a much lower ABV content. The interesting thing about this is it's usually made with the lactobacillus, which turns sugars into lactic acid. And as such, it'll usually be balanced with syrups, sugars, or fruit to balance out that acidity. The Flanders Red Ale is an English beer. It's descended from the porters. It's first fermented with what usual brewers use, and then placed into oak barrels to age and mature. They mix with this one, they mix the older, more mature batches with the younger ones to get a solid balance of flavor. And the name obviously comes from the color of the beer. Red ale. Hello. Goes is one of my favorite. It's from Goslar, Germany. This is with coriander and salt. Really, really flavorful. Really, really kind of puckering. This one is characterized, again, by inoculating the starter beer with lactic acid and bacteria before the primary fermentation. So the starter beer is obviously before it's been fermented, so they inoculate that with lacto. And then finally, to finish it up, we have Lambic. Lambic is really fucking solid beer. Really solid. It's a spontaneously fermented beer from Brussels, Belgium. And the starter beer, which is, again, the beer that's not been fermented, it's left overnight to cool outside, as they did back in the day, as I previously said, that how it started unintentionally. They leave it to cool outside during, I believe it's winter and spring. And then most lambics are even a blend of winter from last year, spring from this year, winter, spring, winter, spring, winter, And the thing is, it's very rare to get an unblended lambic. So if you find one, get it and send it to me. My address is, and my social security, no, I'm just kidding. But if you find an unblended lambic, I would highly recommend getting your hands on that. So finally, to finish it off, we're going to just talk about kettle sours, which is kind of another catch-all term, in that kettle sour, you can brew different types of beer that I just talked about within the list via the kettle sour operation. Kettle sours forgo the wooden barrels and use the sleek sanitized stainless steel barrels that I was talking about. The brewers create a sour mash, and then they allow the beer to cool after it's boiled. And then they pitch the mash. They add the lacto, allowing it to sour. And this reduces the process of souring or ferment the initial fermentation from months to almost days. And finally, again, to finish it off on sours, I think sours are really cool because people who don't even like beer generally really do enjoy sours. It's a really great beer. It's a sessionable beer. They have some that are 4%. They have some that are 10%. So it's really fun. All right, bars that don't serve food. Come on. In this day and age of the gastropub, there is one rule of owning a fucking bar. I've never owned a bar, but keep them in, keep them drinking. Get a fucking popcorn machine. Get a microwave. Get a panini press. Get a pizza oven. The investment is worth its weight in gold. Why in the fuck would you have a place? It's so hard to get a liquor license. Why would you obtain a liquor license and not make a sandwich for someone? I don't understand it. I just don't. I cannot fathom. Look, there's this place in PB, Pacific Beach, San Diego, California. All they have is a popcorn machine. People are hitting that shit up like it's the fucking Statue of fucking Liberty. Because that shit fills you up. You stay in the place. You keep drinking. Keep them in, keep them drinking. Why don't more places just have something? I don't, It is what it is. All right. On to television and movies.
TV and music and movies.
I have 2 TV show recommendations for you guys. I think they're solid. The first one is Mad Dogs. This show came out in 2015, ran until 2016, but it's only a one season miniseries. It's starring Ben Chaplin, Michael Imperioli, Romani Malco, Steve Zahn, Phil Davis, Kobe Bell, Rachel Holmes, and Billy Zane. And it's created by Chris Cole. This is a show about a group of buddies who meet up in Belize at a buddy's house, at a mutual friend's house. They go out for a night on the town, to reunite, and, chaos ensues. I don't want to give you too much. All I have to say is the music is awesome. The cinematography is awesome. The acting is awesome. The screenplay is awesome. It's a really good show. I would highly recommend watching it. It's Mad Dogs. It's on Amazon Prime. Tune in. The second show I have to recommend for you is Red Oaks. This ran from 2014 to 2017, created by Joe Jangemi. I'm probably saying that wrong. I apologize. It stars Craig Roberts, Ennis Esmer, Olivia Cooper, Richard Kind, and Paul Reiser. This show, it's kind of a coming-of-age show. Takes place in the 80s. It's a period piece about a kid from New Jersey, New York, who is deciding kind of what to do with his life, whether he's going to college, whether he wants to be a movie director, which is his dream, or whether he wants to do what his father tells him to do, which is be a bean counter. Because as his father says, there's only 2 sure things in life, death and taxes. So it's basically a show that follows him around. It's 3 seasons long. Again, this is another one on Amazon Prime. So I would highly recommend it. Good music, good cinematography, great acting. Great show. So Mad Dogs and Red Oaks. All right, let's talk remakes for a second. Funny thing is, when I thought I was going to look into this, I really honestly expected to find way more remakes than I actually found. What I actually found was the percentage of remakes in Hollywood has been falling over the past decade. In 2005, 17% of the top grossing films in Hollywood were remakes. So that's 2005. By 2014, only 5% of the top grossing films in Hollywood were remakes. Now, that doesn't speak to the amount of remakes that are being made. However, there are actually less remakes being made than we think there are. And there are reasons why we think it's more than it is. And here they are. First of all, I want to describe what a remake is versus a revival versus a reboot. A remake is the same story with new faces, so different actors. Magnificent Seven. A reboot is basically the exact opposite. Same actors, new storyline. Kind of Star Wars. And then a revival, usually used in television, is a continuation of a story with the same actors that have continued, but there's been a long break. So, X-Files, Twin Peaks, Roseanne. So those are the different categories, first of all. But so here are the main reasons why remakes seem so much more prevalent than they are. The first reason and the main reason, intellectual property. So let's be real. A studio creates a franchise. They've invested money into this franchise. They've invested production dollars into this franchise. They've created something like Star Wars or Baywatch or why would they defer from that? They've created something that's been successful that fans have identified with. You're asking someone to give 2 hours of their life in a movie theater, right? You're asking someone to pay a certain amount of money to go and see a movie. Why not use something that they've already identified with? Whether it's with a new actor or whether it's with the same actor and a new storyline. It's a risk mitigating risk-adverse strategy. to use old storylines and offer them up because, again, we're human beings. We are basically, it's comforting to be in the realm of the familiar. So we're going to be more inclined to be, willing to spend money and spend 2 hours of our day on something that's familiar. The thing is, new actors with the same storylines, it's still familiar. And similar old actors with new storylines, but with the same actors, it's familiar and it's comforting. And we're more willing to engage in that. The second thing is, there's a new way of branding. And this is the one thing we don't realize, is that remakes, reboots, revivals, they've been going on since the beginning of cinema. You don't think of George Clooney as Batman. We don't think of Pierce Brosnan even anymore as James Bond. James Bond is not considered reboots or remakes, but they kind of technically in a way are. They're sequel after sequel after sequel. Batman has been sequel after sequel. Danny DeVito was the freaking Penguin. I mean, come on. So how we do it now is we advertise things as reboots, and it ties into my point earlier of intellectual property, of that people actually want to go and see reboots because they're more familiar with them. So what used to be a reboot back in the day, I mean, Ocean's 11 is a remake. Was it advertised as that? No, because people at that time didn't want to see remakes. Now people do more so. So it kind of skews our interpretation of what's a remake and what isn't. I think that's, a big point as well. And the thing is, Baywatch is the perfect example. The Rock, big time movie star, Baywatch, a familiar concept, but, it didn't really get the turnout that it didn't get the turnout that was expected from those two. So they're not even always successful. And then finally, the last point is, TV revivals have been huge. Whether it's X-Files, whether it's Roseanne, whether it's Twin Peaks. So this is, again, using IP to connect it to intellectual property. Again, this is using intellectual property in order to already have a audience that you've created prior. And the big thing about that is you can get the old generation and the new generation. And once you get those demographics, you have a successful product right there. The one thing that we have to remember, though, is that they are not always successful. As I was just talking about, Baywatch, that only got about 27 million in its first 2 weeks, I think. First week, I could be incorrect. But The Rock's contract was more than 27 million. I guarantee you that. He's the highest paid actor for 2 years straight. 27 million in its first week or first 2 weeks. I hope it was first week for their sake. And then King Arthur, which cost $175 million to make, but that only garnered $34 million internationally. So that was it was not a success. So I'm going to talk real quick I'm going to give you guys a music recommendation. Ellie $, Les, came out with an EP the other day. It's called Lost in Japan. It's a 5-track EP. Every track is named after a specific area in Japan. It has really cool kind of Japanese vibes on the beats. He's getting back to that really like smooth, less rap, that really kind of New Orleans, Texas, like very, very, very cool. I would really highly recommend listening to it. It's only about 15 minutes. By the time you're done with it, you'll wish there was more, but it's cool that it's that short in a way. So check out Lost in Japan. All right, on to financial stuff.
It's the financial
We're talking
stuff.
ETFs real quick. Exchange traded funds. So an exchange traded fund is a marketable security that tracks an index, commodity, bond, or even a foreign market.
Unlike mutual funds, ETFs track a trades like a common stock on a stock exchange. So just to give you a brief example, you can get an ETF in a commodity like gold. You can get an ETF that tracks an industry like oil or natural gas. I guess natural gas is a commodity actually, but you can get an ETF that even tracks a foreign stock exchange. So just to break it down, an ETF is a fund that owns the underlying assets, shares of a stock, bond, futures like gold or silver again, and divides ownership of those assets into stock and shares. And then the shareholders, they don't directly own that asset, but they indirectly own it. Now, the ETF shareholders are entitled to a proportion of the profits, whether it's dividends, whether it's a payout once they liquidate those assets. But the ownership of the funds is really easy to buy. It's like a stock. ETF creation, it's heavily regulated how someone has to create an ETF, which the fund, and it's done by something that's called an AP, which is an authorized participant. And an authorized participant is a large financial institution that is highly regulated and highly credible in regards to creating a fund within an industry that you would invest in. So let's say you buy an ETF in oil. That means that an authorized participant has been allowed to create that fund, and they have a bunch of different oil companies that are in that fund that you don't even necessarily know about. So rather than you buying one stock in, Exxon or Mobil or whatever the fuck, you just buy a stock in X ETF oil fund that might have Exxon within their fund. They might have Mobil within their fund. They might have a bunch of other oil companies in their fund. So it's kind of like a mutual fund that isn't a mutual fund in a way. The advantages of buying ETFs are by buying an ETF, the investor gets instant diversification, which is what I was just articulating. The ability to sell short and sell on the margin and buy on the margin. The expense ratios for ETFs are usually much lower than a mutual fund. And then finally, there are positive tax implications of ETF versus a mutual fund. So examples of widely traded ETFs, there's Triple Q, which QQQ, which tracks the NASDAQ 100, the NASDAQ 100 is an index fund that tracks the top 100 traded and most secure 100 companies on the NASDAQ. There's the DIA, which tracks the Dow Industrial Average. And then there's sector ETFs, as I was explaining earlier. So, for example, you can buy an ETF that tracks a specific sector and that it's diversified within the sector. So the AP, the authorized participant that has set up that fund within the sector, has picked certain companies within that sector that they feel will perform. So you're already diversified within that sector. And you can buy oil, energy sector, financial sector, the biotech sector. And then there's commodity-based ETFs, which are diversified based on the commodities: gold, silver, crude oil, natural gas. So these are pretty awesome. And then ETFs can even track foreign markets. So you can buy an ETF that tracks, the market in, Kazakhstan. The bottom line is ETFs let you pick a large commodity or index or industry that you like and basically be instantly diversified within it. And that's pretty cool. I would highly recommend looking into ETFs. They're really fun. So the next thing I want to talk about is Betting on Zero. Betting on Zero is a 2016 American documentary that talks about Bill Ackman accusing Herbalife, a billion-dollar company, of being nothing more than a pyramid scheme. What Herbalife claims to be is an MLM, which is a multi-level marketing operation. But Bill Ackman says they are truly a pyramid scheme. And the documentary follows Bill Ackman, who is a legendary billionaire hedge fund manager and the founder of Pershing Squared, on his crusade, and also former and current distributors of Herbalife who have been, what they allege is, fucked over by the company, to prove basically that the company is nothing more than a front for a pyramid scheme. Now, the thing that we first have to discuss with this is, obviously, also Herbalife completely denied the accusation. CEO Michael Johnson says that Bill Ackman is simply saying this because he has $1 billion short position against Herbalife, and a short position is when you bet against a company, which is why the documentary is called Betting on Zero. So if the company loses money on the stock exchange, Bill Ackman stands to gain a shitload of money. No, so what we first have to say is what is the difference between an MLM, multi-level marketing operation, and a pyramid scheme? Now, pyramid schemes have only one purpose. Pyramid scheme is to recruit more distributors rather than sell a product, right? More suckers, because you always need to be recruiting more people. Now, the red flags of a questionable MLM opportunity are promises of high earnings with little work, little time, little effort, requirements to purchase a large amount of inventory from the parent company or whatever that will be, and then a request for payment in cash via wire transfer, via check. The red flags of a pyramid scheme are similar to the red flags of a questionable MLM, but a little bit more obvious. Promises to make thousands or even millions with little effort. Revenue generated. This is the main one. Revenue generated from offering opportunities rather than products. Opportunities rather than products. Folks, large startup costs and substantial hidden fees in terms of operation. So the thing about it is, what the documentary says that Herbalife does is they do sell a product. That's fair, right? They sell a product. However, the documentary also briefly asserts that the product is lower quality at a higher cost than a Slim Fast, which is basically what Herbalife does. But the bulk of their business comes from sales to distributors, who are told then to seek people to sell the product for them. Again, revenue is generated from the opportunity, not the product. The risk is that if you don't drink or resell the stuff that you buy as a distributor, that you have to pay for it. And it does go bad after a certain amount of time. The accusation asserted in the documentary is that Herbalife also targets groups who are easily victimized by false promises, immigrants, people from low-income communities. You know what? I have to say, fuck Herbalife. Have you ever seen a fucking... They might say they have a product, but they don't. They don't have a product. Have you ever seen an Herbalife truck rolling around? Have you ever? I've never seen Herbalife other than on the front of the LA Galaxy soccer team's uniform. I've never seen someone drinking an Herbalife. I've seen people drinking Slim Fast. I've never seen someone drinking Herbalife. I've never seen an Herbalife storefront. When the film came out, Herbalife bought the domain name and registered it, bettingonzero.com, in order to post their own shit on there, disputing what was said in the documentary. Those motherfuckers are scumbags. I'm sorry, Michael Johnson. He worked at Disney before he worked at Herbalife. Need I say more? He said, we sold stories at Disney. Here we're selling reality. That's what he says in the documentary. You're playing with people's lives. An MLM, a multi-level marketing scheme, is very close to a Ponzi scheme. They have crossed the line. And anyone who who can view that differently, anyone who's willing to work for Herbalife and willing to tell their friends that they can sell product for them and get people into that. You know what? Again, my mom's mom always said, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. So I'm going to move on to the next topic. We're going science, space, and technology. So a man paralyzed recovers. Jared Chinook from Toma, Wisconsin, 29-year-old man, he was paralyzed in a snowmobile accident. He made medical history by walking independently after a pioneering surgery. The doctors implanted a remote-controlled electrode in his back to stimulate surviving nerves around his spinal cord. So they implanted a remote-controlled device, but the patient's own mind and thoughts were able to make his legs move. In the first week after surgery, he had to use a harness. 25 weeks later, no harness. And over the course of the year, he walked 103 yards, and stood for 16 minutes. Now, he had the use of a front-wheeled walker, but come on. Paralyzed since 2013, and he walked 103 yards and stood for 16 minutes? Psst. Dr. Kendall Lee of the Mayo Clinic explained that as soon as the remote control device that was allowing his thoughts to control his legs was turned off, he became completely paralyzed again. And here are some of the specifics of the surgery. It was an innovative technique and involved inserting an electrode into the epidural space, which is the fat-filled hollow region in the spinal cord. Surrounding the spinal cord. And then a battery was also inserted in the abdomen with a wire running from the abdomen to the mind control device in order to power it. The doctor's reactions to the matter, they were excited by the breakthrough, of course, but they still need to establish exactly how electrically stimulating a severed spinal cord was able to restore voluntary movement via mind control. And what they think is that it was it may depend on the residual nerve fibers that are still connecting from the spinal cord to the brain. So the more residual nerve fibers that one has left over, the more likely it is that this procedure will work. The challenge now is understanding how and why this happened. So even the folks at the Mayo Clinic, which is, obviously top notch, don't understand why this happened. The challenge is finding new patients who will also react to this in a positive way. And Mr. Chinook, the gentleman who had the procedure done on him, said he said, "I'll never fully be able to leave the wheelchair behind, but my goal is, even if I leave it behind to go to the fridge, I'm going to leave it behind a little bit." So, hey, shout out to him. That's really cool. Jared Chinook, and freaking Kendall Lee, Mayo Clinic. Wish nothing but the best. So finally, we're going to hit off on NASA's plans to the moon and beyond. NASA plans to return to the moon before late 2020. And they plan to go to Mars in 2030. That's the headline, folks. Trump signed Space Policy Directive 1, directing NASA to lead innovative and sustainable space program of exploration with commercial and international partners moving forward. So in response, NASA submitted a plan to Congress, and this plan has 5 parts. The first part is transition the U.S. human spaceflight activities in low Earth orbit to commercial operations that support NASA and the needs of an emerging private sector market. So this is going to result in public-private partnerships within low orbit activities for commercial purposes. Hello, Elon Musk. Hello, Jeff Bezos. Hello, operator. That is just setting up that market. The International along with that, the International Space Station will remain the hub for low orbit Earth operations until 2024. At which point we get to the second goal. Lead the emplacement of capabilities that support lunar surface operations and facilitate missions beyond cislunar space, which is orbital lunar space. So the space station is there to help and train crews for operations beyond the moon, which is pretty damn cool. I mean, so we're rocking again. The third is to foster scientific discovery and characterization of lunar resources through a series of robotic explorations. So we're going to use robots within the moon too. The fourth is to return U.S. astronauts to the surface of the moon. They say return. So all you conspiracy theorists out there, we've been. Don't you dare say anything otherwise. We've been. Return U.S. astronauts to the surface of the moon for a sustained campaign of exploration and use. And this is where something called the Gateway Project comes into the fold. So this is fundamentally different than the last moon mission. We've been there before. NASA is building a plan for Americans to orbit the moon starting in 2023. And land astronauts no later than the late 2020s. The key component to establish the first permanent American presence and infrastructure on and around the moon is the Gateway Project. So the Gateway Project is a lunar orbiting platform. So it goes around the fucking moon. Further, it is going to establish human footprint in space further than ever before. The Gateway Project will also be able to command the module within the lunar vicinity. And some elements of the Gateway are already under construction within NASA facilities in the U.S. And the first project is planning to launch from Florida in 2023. So the lunar surface will serve as a training ground for operations beyond the moon moving forward, aka Mars. But by 2020s, the lunar lander crew will begin trips to the surface of the moon in tandem with the Gateway Project, which is, again, the one that's going to be orbiting the lunar surface. And the fifth goal of this, the fifth and final, this is really exciting, is to demonstrate the capabilities required for human missions to Mars and other destinations. This is the InSight mission that's going on right now. It's on its way to Mars, and it's going to get there in November. It's going to study the interior. And then I believe we have another one going up in July of 2020 that's going to do a further examination on past life within Mars and see if it's sustainable. This work will help in conjunction with the Gateway Project that I was just speaking about on the moon, in order to allow for the first rocket launch from the lunar area to Mars. So the idea is that we won't launch from Earth to Mars, but we'll launch from the moon to Mars. And again, this is going to lead for crewed missions to Mars. Not crewed as in C-R-E-U-D, U-E-D, who knows? Crewed, C-R-E-W-E-D, crewed missions to Mars by the 2030s. So, pretty exciting. And it's going to work in conjunction with work done on the moon. It's going to be, who knows? I really think it could be a lot of fun to see what's going to happen moving forward, especially commercially in the next couple of years. So, I just wanted to run you through a couple of things we're going to talk about next time, guys. I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for tuning in to the OddCast. Next time we're going to have another brew of the day. It's going to be a nice double hazy. We're going to talk about sour IPAs. Not as much as we talked about sours today, just a brief one. We're going to talk about Ryder Cup action. We're going to get through the MLB postseason preview. We're going to talk about the negatives of a 1 through 16 NBA postseason ranking. We're going to talk about more ways to be a clever investor. Diversification, diversification, diversification. We're going to talk about what the heck is going on with cryptocurrency. We're going to talk about orca whales. Did you know that there's 2 different types? Because I didn't. We're going to talk some more fun stuff. As always, more TV recommendations, more goofy shit, more bollocks. I appreciate your guys' time. Thank you for tuning in to the OddCast, where stuff that's odd gets the nod. Have a great night.
Let's get a little weird. Let's get a little odd. Those sounds you like to hear. We got it going on. It's the OddCast. It's the OddCast. It's the OddCast. It's the OddCast.